Hello, fabulous listeners. Thanks for tuning in to Old Bodies Outside. This is your host, Brian Peterson. This episode's guest is Andy Glaze. He loves challenging himself to do hard things and always has a smile on his face. During every single week for more than 3 years, as in for the last 173 weeks straight, he has run more than 100 miles for each of those weeks. Too bad Andy doesn't get paid $1 for every step he takes.
Too bad.
Yeah. Well, Andy, thanks for coming on to Old Bodies Outside.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I want to kind of start off with you're in Southern California, right?
I am in Southern California, yes.
And are you work in Laverne?
I do work in Laverne, yes.
Okay, that's where I went to high school. I was graduated from Damien.
Oh, okay, nice. Yeah, know it well. It's a
Yeah.
small city.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it's situated in a nice area too. I ran those foothills a lot. I grew up in Diamond Bar, and I love driving out there in the summertime and running the horse trails up above San Dimas, Laverne, and getting some good hill training in and whatnot. Beautiful area.
Yeah, we have some really beautiful like oak covered trails up there. It's really nice.
Yeah. And then you get some good mountains out there too, which I always loved going and doing some mountain running in with San Jacinto. And then you got San Gorgonio pretty close by, I think.
Yeah, and Mount Baldy is really close to Laverne, so I can always it's like 45 minutes, so I can hit it on the way home if I want to. Or sometimes I get a wild hair and I'll do it before I go into work. Like show up there at like 2:30 in the morning and then like catch the sunrise and then run back down.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. Do you ever do any doubles on it?
Oh, I'm sure I've done doubles, triples. I've done lots of stuff at Baldy. Baldy is it's definitely a training ground for me, and because it's only 13 miles out and back, you can really do a lot out there if you want. Um, it's a great place to train for mountain ultra running because of the terrain.
Right. So I didn't know how many miles Baldy was, and that sounds kind of goofy. So my high school coach at Damien High School, we had one of the dads on the team would help us out on Saturdays and would usher us to that trailhead that's at about 6,000 feet, and we would have a goal of getting up to the top of Baldy. Pace did not matter. It was, can you run every step to the top? And like I said, the pace didn't matter, and then run back down. And so that's actually what got me into trail running, was those Saturday adventures on Baldy.
So you going up Ski Hut? Does that sound familiar?
That does sound familiar. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's not quite as far, but it's
Okay.
a lot steeper.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
really really steep stuff.
And it was. Is it runnable though? So maybe
Uh,
we're thinking.
well, there's not there's I wouldn't there's sections that are runnable, but there's sections that
Yeah.
are pretty darn steep. The way I go is I go up the fire road, and
Yeah.
then you come into like the ski resort, and then you take that up. It's called Devil's Backbone, and then that loops
Yeah.
around. That's the one that's like 13 miles out and back. So
That sounds familiar. I remember starting on a fire road, hitting that ski hut, get some water
yeah,
there, and then really grind it out on Devil's Backbone.
yeah. That's the more runnable way to go, but you're still gaining probably 5,000 feet of vert or something like that.
Yeah. Well, what a wonderful place to go out running. I live out in Kansas, so I'm a professor at Kansas State University, and it's been fun in my life. I've lived in a lot of different regions of the United States and found different places to run, and just found joy in all of it and beauty in all of it. And this time of year is really nice to go running in Kansas. I don't have the elevation gain of Baldy, but
Sure.
we have the big horizon for sunrises right now. We're getting a lot of June storms that come through, and they're kind of clearing out in the morning. And so the sunrises are always really nice. And I usually get up about 5 a.m. to go running. So I'm catching the sunrise at this time of year, and always love that.
Yeah, it's the best. Sunrises and sunsets every day for me.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's fantastic. So do you have a preference between sunrise or sunset?
I tend to like sunrise better, mostly just because I like that feeling of being sleepy. You're running in the dark, and then the sun comes up, and it like kind of wakes you up. When you do 100-mile, 200-mile races, like you're suffering all night in the dark and the cold or whatever, and then when that sun comes up, it's like, it really just wakes you up and makes you feel alive again, and it's quite nice. So, uh, I mean, I love, so I feel like sunsets tend to be like prettier at times, but like they also represent me going into what I call night ops, where you're like, got to put the headlamp on and start suffering through the nighttime running experience. So I'll pick sunrise all day. And I'm a morning person, so I enjoy my mornings, and I feel fresher in the mornings when I'm running than in the evening.
Yeah, that's all very similar for myself. First off, yeah, I feel fresher running in the mornings than the evenings. My wife likes to run in the evenings or the afternoons and the evenings, and that's when my legs feel the heaviest, actually. But also talking about that sunrise coming up in an ultra marathon, say a 100-mile ultra marathon or longer. Um, I don't know if there's ever been an experience in my life where I feel such an energy from the sun. You've gone through the
Yeah.
nighttime and whatnot, and you feel such a great energy coming out of that.
Well, and you can be so tired, and then as soon as that sun comes up, it's like it wakes you right back up.
Yeah, yeah. Well, why don't we take it back to the start? So, how did you get into running?
Well, I got into running. I mean, I was exercising at the time because okay, so this is like before the internet, before we could like go online and like figure out what was wrong with us. And I was a very inactive 20-year-old or 20, early 20s. And I started to get sort of like anxiety issues. Wasn't feeling so good about myself. And someone suggested I try exercise, which for me, exercise was like lifting weights and like elliptical trainer and all that sort of stuff. Um, and hold on one sec, my kids just got home. Sorry. Um,
No worries.
they're out there fighting, of course, because they're kids. Um,
Yeah.
so so I started doing exercise to try to like help with like my anxiety and all that sort of stuff. And in order to educate myself, I took a community college class on exercise science. And because, back before there was podcasts and back before there was, you had to like go to the library to, figure stuff out. So
Right.
I took a class, and in the class I had to run a mile and a half in the beginning of the class and then for the final, and just basically never stopped running since then. I mean, you have peaks and valleys and, life events that might have like limited my running for like small periods of time, but like pretty much I've been running pretty constantly for like the last 21 years.
Yeah, that's fantastic. What an interesting way to start. And hey, no worry about the kids. My kids right now, my kids are at wilderness camp in northern Minnesota for a month. But they get home. They got one more week to go. They're finishing up their third week right now, and we've never sent them off for a month before. So it's been a quiet house, and kind of like you notice when the kids are
Right.
gone, you're like, oh man, this is oddly quiet.
So
But
so quiet, yes.
so quiet, and it's not as spontaneous anymore. It's not as fun either. I mean, it's still fun, but the kids add such a great element. But talking about
They
getting
do.
into running and whatnot, one thing I really liked is that you did you said it was a mile and a half run, and then you kind of just stuck with it and really enjoyed the process of it. And I think that's something that I really like about what you bring to running, and I find it to be very inspiring, is that you just love it. Like it's play. You're out there not worried about, and I think that's one thing that I was looking through your Instagram profile before this, and I was like, I wonder how many people think that, you know, Andy's like this like post Olympic elite athlete. And I think you're just like an average guy going out there and enjoying the process.
Yeah, and I'm trying to encourage other people to do the same because I feel like there's too much emphasis in the running community about running fast and running races and, which, it serves its purpose. I obviously love to race, and there's been periods in my life where I tried to run fast, but I feel like that's like sort of a barrier entry for a lot of people to get into running is they feel like they have to go fast. They feel like they have to be out of breath the whole time. They feel like their heart rate has to be in their throat. And, my approach to running is like zone two, just chill, just enjoy yourself, enjoy the process. You'll be able to go further. If you stay in zone two, it'll be a lot more enjoyable, especially when you're first starting off. And I think I have, even though I'm like this ultra runner, just talking to a lot of the people that follow me, I have a lot of people that are just starting running. I have a lot of people that are doing 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons, and that's where they're at. And they follow me because I'm a runner, but like I want to encourage those people to have fun and not turn it into like a punishment or something that they don't look forward to. Because like anything, this is something you can do your entire life, and if you approach it the right way with the right mindset, then it can be this like just amazing part of your life, until you basically can't move anymore.
Yeah, no, and it's so simplistic too. I love the simplicity of it. You can, pretty much go do it wherever you want. If you got your shoes with you, go out wherever and, get some miles in and go play, go have fun.
Yeah, it's a great way to explore the world. I mean, anytime I go on vacation, anytime I go anywhere, I'm always trying to figure out where I'm going to run. I like to wake up early and go check out the city that I'm in before everybody wakes up. It's just a fun way to see the world on foot. You
Yeah.
can find a lot of like very interesting places before the world wakes up, and then go back and explore them with the family, later. Um, so it's great.
If you were to be dropped into a new city that you've never been to, say in the United States or whatnot, and you fly there, you land, you get to your hotel, and you're like, okay, I got to start thinking about, what's going to be my run tomorrow morning. So how would you start to plan that out?
So normally what I do is I start like on Google Maps, and I'll look on Google Maps and see if I see any like green areas or hills or anything like that. Sort of like get like a broad satellite imagery. Um, and then you can zoom in, see if I can find anything that way. And then I'll go on Strava and I'll look at their global heat map, and the global heat map shows like where everybody's run or biked or anything. So like the more times somebody has run it or the more times somebody has biked it, the trail becomes like darker, and so you can see like where the more popular trails are, or the more popular routes or whatever in the area that you're at. And so then I'll kind of like use Google Maps and Strava global heat map, and I'll like, overlap them and kind of like figure out what it is. And then a lot of times on Google Maps, if it's like a trailhead or something like that, it'll be marked. You can click on it. It'll show you pictures of the trailhead. There'll be reviews. Um, that's basically my like my two go-to. I mean, I've used all trails in the past, but for me, those two, Strava Global Heat Map and Google Maps, has done the best for me lately. Um, and I'll just go from there. Lately, because I have such a huge following too, like if I'm going somewhere new, a lot of times, like I went to Fresno for a symposium a couple of months ago, and I like said on my social media, like, hey, I'm going to Fresno, like, where would you recommend I run? And I got so many messages like, go to this park, go to these trails, like, which was really helpful because then I did do that and like, discovered a lot of like really cool trails in Fresno. So, I mean, that's an advantage too of social media.
Yeah, it certainly is an advantage. I like though that what you said with Google Maps, you can click on a trailhead and see what it looks like, and that might help someone have a boost in perceived safety before they go there. Be like, okay, like I think I'll be safe there. Like that's
Right.
something that's real nice.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I understand the safety like feeling, and luckily on some level I'm not a female, and I know they have to deal with a lot of terribleness when it comes to safety. But like, I'm 6 foot and like 165 pounds, and like I just don't really worry too much about safety. Right or wrong, it's just not something that goes through my head. So, but yeah, it would probably be a good thing too if you're a female, just to make sure. A lot of times people will like write stuff on the internet if there's any weird stuff going on in those trail systems.
yeah. I'll have to use that Google Maps approach. I use a kind of a limited approach to tell you the truth. So I like to route myself using Gaia GPS, and so I'm not on
Hmm.
Strava. I do have an account on Strava, but I do not use it. It's not on my phone. I think it's like you kind of delete it, but still hangs out somewhere. But I use Gaia GPS, and they have public routes on there too, and it probably serves the same type of purpose as Strava global heat maps. probably pretty similar to
Yeah.
that. And so recently I had a conference about 2 weeks ago in Portland, Maine, and I'd never been there. And so I went through the same exercise when I got there. I flew in, got to
Yeah.
my hotel room, and I was like, okay, like I'm going to get up tomorrow morning at 5. I'm going to go running, but where do I go? And so you got to start the research process. And I think it was honestly great to hear your response to that, because for the listening audience out there, I'm sure there's a lot of people that, are looking to get into running, or they're new to running. And so, like, some of these, like, just little tidbits of advice are really helpful with getting going with running.
Yeah, and you don't need to use Strava, the app or anything, to use their global heat map. That's just like it's just a web page. So you don't even need an account to use it. The other,
Nice.
I'm a huge Strava fan. I'm just going to throw that out. I'm even orange check marked on Strava because I'm like a influencer on Strava. Um, Not paid or anything, but like, it is my like favorite app. They actually have like a new feature which I don't use because I'm not a beginner, but you can go in and say like I want to run 3 miles, and it'll route you a 3 mile loop or whatever from wherever you are. Or if you want to run 10 miles, you want to run seven, and it'll use its heat map system and its artificial intelligence to like design like course for you wherever you are, which is
Wow.
kind of cool too. Yeah, it's a newer feature. I actually was just in um, Wyoming, and I there was no real trail system close to me, so I actually clicked on it just like, oh, let's see like where does it take me? Because I kind of wanted to see what main roads and everything it took me on, and it actually did a pretty good job. So
That's
and that's a
amazing.
feature on on Strava. It'll like just design you and you can put in whatever mileage you want. I want to run a 5K, I want to do 10K, whatever. So
I had
and
I did not
it'll do
know
turn
that.
by turn like instructions
Yeah,
as you're running. Yeah.
this is amazing that AI has gotten into, helping people find routes. I wonder if it's going to get to the point here, and I'm sure it probably will, where it's like, hey, like I'm out near, because I'm assuming you're out there for Bighorn, and say you don't have the Bighorn 100 course, and you're thinking of putting a race on out there, and you use some AI technology to design a course. And you're like, okay, I want to have over 20,000 feet of gain. I want it to be 100 miles.
Right.
I wonder if
Yeah.
AI technology would design that for you.
I bet you in the future it would. I mean, it can't be that challenging, especially if you can
Right.
upload GPX files of all the like different trails out there, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll have to check out Strava for what you mentioned, though. I wasn't aware of that application for it to design, a route, and that would have been perfect in Portland, Maine. I mean, I fared just fine, but still.
Yeah, I just went to this whole Strava. It was called Camp Strava. It was this big event, and like they're releasing so much new stuff in the future. It looks like they have like 100 million users, and they're really like taking off right now. So it's kind of cool to be, you know, one of the influencers on that app. But I've been using it. I have almost 50,000 miles logged on Strava. I'm not entirely sure how long I've been running on it. I think like probably around 10 years, but yeah, it's a lot of miles in 10 years.
Well, I think that's so cool too. I mean, I think that's something that, like, I need to reflect on. So I've been a lifelong runner since elementary school. I did it in middle school, high school, and further on. And I haven't documented anything. Like, I know what races I've run. And so,
Right.
like, do you need to document it? No, but I think there's some nostalgic factor to it though too, where it's like you want to look back, a decade ago, and you're like, oh yeah, like I remember that run. I definitely do.
Well, what I like too with Strava is because they have your local heat map too. So like I'll open that up and you see a globe, and I can like spin the globe and like zoom in like going to China and go, oh, here's where I did that race in China, and you can still see the GPS line of like where I raced in China, or like spinning around like, oh, we were on vacation in Iceland, and like I can zoom in on Iceland and see all the little like segments of where I ran in Iceland, and it's pretty cool. And then like obviously like in Southern California, it's like this crazy grid because I've run every street in my city, I've run every street in the city I work in, you know, all these different cities where I will go to, and I will run like every street just because it's like when you run as much as I do, you got to find like interesting things to do. But yeah, it's like so Southern California looks crazy to me. My heat map is like because I've run so much of the Southern California. Um, but also like all the races I've done in weird spots in Wyoming, and you know New York City, the marathon, it's on there. It's just kind of cool, And back in the day, obviously, like I was talking, I'm old, so it's like I have notebooks and I used to like write down. But like even to find the mileage back in the day, you used to have to like drive it in your car and kind of estimate, all right, this is 10 miles or this is 6 miles, right? But it's like, was it? I mean, it was close. Um, so, but I have all the handwritten notes, and then I had like the GPS watches back in the day, and they're like you uploaded them, but it uploaded them into like an Excel spreadsheet. There was no apps or nothing online. So I wish I had like a every run I've ever done, just so because like certain people are like at 100,000 miles, and I'm like, oh, I wonder if I'm at 100,000 miles. I don't really know,
Right.
but I know I've definitely run a lot.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 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 Did you buy those little the logs from Runner's World?
Yeah, I have a couple of those, and like I think
Yeah.
Nathan, which is like a Southern California company, used to make logs that I bought a bunch of those too. I used to use them for running and lifting weights and everything. I'd log it all out in there to keep track. But as soon as the GPS watch came around, it was like that's over. We're in technology now. So
Yeah, and it's fantastic. I think it is fantastic to embrace that and see what we're doing. Sorry if I keep wiping my brow. So my office up here does not get house AC, but I have a portable AC unit. But when I record with it on, I just get like so much fuzz in the microphone that I turn it off. And
right,
so
right.
it's high 90s outside right now, and the
Oh
sun is
man,
right to my west right now coming through. So
you're
sorry if I
you're
keep
getting a
wiping my
workout.
brow.
You got a little sauna workout going on.
That's right, I do. Yeah, I've seen that. So you got a sauna inside your house?
I do. Yeah, just
That
a
is
like
so
a like
cool.
a two-person one. Yeah, it was like honestly, it's infrared. It was like 2 grand from Costco, and it
Okay.
just plugs right into your normal plug, just the 110
Yeah.
outlet. And I haven't noticed any change in my electricity bill. It's probably like $5 or $6 a month in electricity, and it works great. My wife and I love it. We've never slept better at night than you do a little sauna session before bed, and it's like you're in a coma. It's amazing.
Really? I like it.
Yeah,
I was telling my wife before we started recording, I was like, "Hey, this guy I'm recording with, he's got a sauna inside his house and he's got a tub for ice baths." And my wife's like, "Oh my gosh, I want that."
it's well. See, you could have. I mean, you could have the tub outside. I mean, the thing about California is it's hard to have the tub outside because it gets so hot. Oh, I guess. Well, you guys get pretty cold winters, right?
We get frigid winters.
Yeah. So you could have, an indoor and an outdoor, like I don't know. We have the chiller, so it just like it's kind of like a jacuzzi, but instead of like hot water, it's making it cold. So it's got a pump and a filter and all that, and you have to put the chemicals in it just like a jacuzzi. But it like
Okay.
instead of having to add ice, it just like makes the water super cold. So,
Nice.
but yeah, going back and forth between the hot and the cold is pretty phenomenal. I
Yeah.
yeah,
Do you ice bath every single day?
I do if I'm like home and I can do it. Obviously if I go other places, I don't like go out of my way to try to figure out how to do it. I've tried like in hotels and stuff, and it's just not a very effective system to try. I've
Try
filled
going
up
icy in
trash
the
bags
bathtub?
with ice. Yeah, and then their bathtubs are so little, like you really can just get your legs cold, and it's just like that's not the really the same experience. So maybe a cold shower, but um, I mean I try to. I think it's really great for recovery, but I think it's really great for like mental health too. It makes you feel really happy and good, and it's quite the experience. Once you start doing it, it's very addictive.
Yeah, I need to get back into it. So, I had the luxury of accessing one where I went to college and I would go into it twice a day and take ice
Yeah.
baths twice a day. And then I graduated from undergrad and haven't taken ice baths since. And so it's been a couple decades now, and I need to get back into them.
Well, like for the winter time where you live, like, you can just buy like one of those Rubbermaid 100-gallon tubs from like Tractor Supply or like one of the like local feed places. And they're like $100. And, you just fill it with water and leave it outside. And,
Yeah.
every morning just go out and break the ice. I mean, that's free. And then in the
Yeah.
summertime, you'll have to find a different solution. whatever that, either buy an ice or, you can buy an ice maker, or you can do what I did and buy a chiller and, plumb it in. But yeah, there's a lot, especially if I live somewhere cold, the options would be like a lot cheaper because like
Uh-huh,
Mother
uh-huh.
Nature does all the hard work.
That's right. Yeah, and you're totally right. I mean, we have a lot of stretches where we're not getting above 32 degrees, and so yeah. Okay, I'm inspired. I love it. Look at that. You're inspiring me some more here.
Good, good.
So, one of the things that you were talking about earlier, that running has really decreased your levels of anxiety. Are there anything else like that you notice now, being in your midlife? You're, I think, 45 years old. Things that just like on the daily, just daily things that really running helps you with.
Um, I mean, the whole journey has really helped me with like time management because I have to juggle all these things in my life and still, manage a lot of things. Um, I think, in general, just like staying calm under pressure and like doing like, especially in races and stuff, like being able to like overcome a lot of dynamic situations and like figure out solutions and do it in a mindset where like maybe I'm like super tired and overwhelmed. Um, which like so I'm a firefighter and so my job requires a lot of that. I'll wake up at 3 a.m. out of a dead sleep and have to go do some very complex task. Um, so it helps with my job. Um, and just in general, like if I'm running and like being active, then I'm able to like stay calmer and more present with my kids and my wife and not necessarily have like emotional reactions and like you know get angry over dumb stuff and things like that because like the running has like sort of calmed me down or like flooded my body. I'm not a scientist or whatever, but like seems like floods my body with like hormones or chemicals or whatever that keep me in like a better mental state. So I, there's so many advantages. I mean, and then just like being physically strong and things like that, which is obviously an advantage for my job too, and then setting like a good example for my kids. Like I want my kids to be active. I want my kids to grow up under this understanding the importance of exercise and hard work and all that that I preach on a daily basis.
Yeah, and I love, like, for me, I feel like I get like, even if it's going running on the roads for 5 miles, a bit of a sense of adventure, just kind of. And I don't know if maybe it's sense of adventure is right, or if I'm just having an endorphin high or what, but like there are hormones and chemicals that flood the body. You feel good, and like there's something. Maybe it's not a
Yeah.
sense of adventure, a sense of accomplishment. Sense of accomplishment that comes post run, and I'm like, okay, like I did something for myself. That was fantastic, and I have a more. It has a calm effect for me for the next 24 hours through the day, and it is nice.
And it makes food taste better too, which is always nice. I love
Yeah,
eating right after like a really long run. That's amazing.
yeah, yeah. So you're a big fan of going after applying yourself to doing hard things. Was that something that applied to becoming a no meat athlete? And what is that? What does that mean? Is that vegetarian or vegan? And I've been vegan since 2011, but I wasn't sure if you're vegetarian or vegan.
Yeah, so I was vegetarian for about 16 years, and that's where it came from, no meat athlete, because I ate no meat, and I was like didn't eat eggs or anything like that either. So basically, I was a vegetarian who ate cheese. And then I think about 3.5 years ago, I started to develop like a dairy allergy. And so when you're a vegetarian with a dairy allergy, you are a vegan now. So so now I'm a vegan, and I've been a vegan for like 3.5 years. But essentially, I haven't had any meat in 20 years. So although there might have been some sketch situations when I visited China, there's some lost in translation stuff. Who really knows? But
Yeah.
I haven't eaten meat on purpose or like that I've known about in 20 years.
Yeah, Andy, a similar thing kind of happened to me. I went vegetarian first, and I wasn't vegetarian all that long when this happened, but about 6 months to a year into it, it's pretty quick. Like I developed that dairy allergy, and I was stubborn against it. I was super stubborn against it, and Friends were telling me like, hey, like just try giving up dairy and see what happens to your body. And it's like, no, 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 I love cheese. Like I love goat cheese. And goat
Yeah.
cheese is a little bit different than this, but yeah. So, and when I gave it, and like I was actually at that point having a hard time getting out for runs longer than 30 minutes because I need to go to the bathroom. And so I gave up dairy, and it substantially increased my quality of life.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it was like, I mean, I love good cheese, and I definitely miss it. Um, but yeah, I was like, I just had stomach problems all the time, was super gassy, and like, I always just assumed it was because I ate a lot of broccoli. People would be like, "Oh, you're a vegetarian, you eat a lot of broccoli, you eat a lot of, that causes gas," and like, and so I always just rationalized it like, yeah, I just eat a lot of fiber, and so that's why my stomach's always like this. And then it just kept getting worse and worse. And then my wife went vegan. She was also a vegetarian, and she went vegan. And so I was like, oh, it would be easier if we both did it. If we both like, then all our food's vegan. We don't have to worry about cross contamination and all that stuff. And then literally, like, my stomach problems all went away. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. Now I know what's going on. So, um, yeah, and it's, my stomach's been great since then, so I got no complaints. But I do
Yeah,
miss
that,
cheese.
yeah, of course, and that's a very similar story for myself. Like it's nice to have a functional stomach. It's nice not to be gassy all the time. It's nice to be pretty rhythmic with my movements and whatnot. But hey, talking about being setting an example for your kids. So there's a lot of things that you do that I think are really inspiring. I practice them myself. Maybe not quite as well as you do it. It fits my lifestyle type of thing. But I love that you've written on one of your posts you don't watch TV. Do you own a TV?
I do. Well, my wife owns a TV. I do not. It does not get turned on if I'm home. So the it's like a weird thing where it's like because it's been so many years since I've watched TV that like if it's on and I see it, like it causes me like anxiety. I feel like it makes me feel weird to look at it. So, but yeah, my wife, she enjoys Netflix and certain shows and stuff, and my kids like they're more like YouTube tablet type things. Like, I think TV is really a dead like technology. When you look at like the new generation of kids, like nobody watches really TV anymore. So, but yeah, we do have a TV in the house, but we didn't have one in the house for a long time, and I fought it, and then her parents bought us one for Christmas this year, and so I had to, and like I came home and it was like installed on the wall, so I'm like, well, you know, it is what it is. But yeah, I just find it like just a time suck, and my wife uses it to unwind, and that's great. I'm not going to judge her on that, but like for me, there's so many other things I'd rather do than sit in front of a TV and watch something.
Yeah,
So I'm sure I'm missing out, but I'm doing all right.
yeah, I didn't buy a TV from the time I was 18 to about 40. And just, and like it just to me was I'm not attracted too often to simple pleasures. Like I like to kind of work for something. Maybe it's working for knowledge, reading a book, or doing something, learning something, being curious. And that's just kind of how I've always rolled, and I've kind of always kind of just been a person that doesn't like is not too attracted to simple pleasures like that that are really easy to get. And I do agree with you that if you have been away from TV for a while, one of the things that would get me was if I went to someone's house and had the news on, I heard commercials, like, oh my gosh, commercials, like that would be something that really hit me the hardest, to tell you the truth.
It was so funny the other day. We were somewhere and they had a TV, and I told my kids like, "Hey, there's a TV if you guys want to watch TV." And so they turn it on. They had no idea how to like operate it. Like they couldn't figure out the like, navigational screen and all that. And then they finally like pick a channel and they go on it, and there was 12 commercials in a row.
Oh
And
my
my son
gosh.
kept going, "It's another commercial, Dad, another one." And they started counting, and I'm like, "And this is why we don't watch TV."
That's
It's like,
yeah.
and then they turned it off, and then they went back and are watching YouTube or whatever whatever like the kids watch nowadays. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's fun. It's dead. I mean, it's like the newspaper. I mean, it's gonna go away. It just is. So, but it'll, my mom still probably watches. She's 75. She probably still reads the newspaper, and there'll still be people in our generation like still watching TV probably till they're 75. But this new generation isn't gonna. It's not gonna be about that. So.
Yeah, I've seen this. I've seen a similar trend with my kids. That's for sure. So one thing that I wanted to ask about today, I love that with your Instagram posts, you conclude them with "smile" or "you're doing it wrong." And I was like, "Gosh, Andy, that's really fantastic. We're on this planet once. Let's have fun." But I want to know, where did your positivity come from?
I mean, so it really came from my dad. He was like really, really big on mindset and positivity. To the point where his email address. Remember back in the day when you used to make your own email address? So his email address was positive 50 because he had turned 50 years old, and so that you put how old you were in the email address. So that was just like his thing. And every night at dinner, he would go around the table and he would make us all tell him what the most positive thing that had happened to us that day. And as kids, we'd say stupid things like, oh, I got to eat a hot dog or, whatever. But it was just the idea that he was, constantly trying to make us think of something that was good, even if it was like a terrible day, you know. Sometimes it was like, well, we're having family dinner right now. That's the positive thing. But he really like pushed that as a young child. And then, you know, as I became an adult and, I started to like really think about those life lessons that he had instilled in me young, and then started to kind of take them and really use them, and they really work. So
Yeah.
thanks, Dad. But I mean that's the origin story of like I think a lot of my positivity and like thinking positive, and you know obviously I've gone way further and deeper than he ever did, but um, there's a lot to be said about like your mentality and your mental strength when you are able to try to stay positive, or try to turn negatives into positives, or look at failures as positives, look at the bad things as positives. Like there's always a way to look at a scenario and try to be like try to flip like the script. I mean, there's some things like my dad died last year. I can't really think of a whole lot of positivity about that situation, but obviously I feel very lucky that I had as many years as I did with him. So, you know, um, some things are not you're not going to find like a whole lot of positivities, but at the same time, like you can still try to find something to like to shine that light on it. So
Yeah, I think for most things, there are exceptions. Most things though, you can flip it over to the positive side even when, you're maybe feeling irritable, or, something, there's some things that went wrong in that day. You can flip it around to the positive side for most things. And I think that's
yeah.
something that like connects really like with the way that you do races and whatnot. Is there anything that is there really considered? Is there such thing as a bad race? Earlier we were talking about how people really put these like expectations on them for running. I got to hit this pace. I got to hit this time. I got to do this. I got to do that. But the act of going out and racing, it seems like you're just always having fun. And so I was wondering, I was like, gosh, is having a bad race even such a thing for Andy?
Well, I mean, yes, I have bad races, and I have not finished races due to lots of circumstances, but like, I mean, having a bad race for me would literally just be like just not necessarily feeling as strong as I wanted to feel, or having to, I don't know how to describe it. Like, I guess like there's just times where in an ultra run you feel really low, um, and it could be for a variety of reasons, but it's how you approach that low, and it's how you mentally get through it that like will like bring the race back around. But sometimes like I just did Bighorn in Wyoming, and it took me 31 hours, which is very, very slow for me for a 100 miler. Um, and so there was a lot of hours of suffering out there. And, a lot of that had to do with the fact that it was a very, very muddy course. Um, and I'm not a mud runner. I'm like a desert runner. So I struggled running through it. I mean, there's some people out there that are just like going through it like no big deal. And that was not me. Like I was slipping and sliding and falling and, um, just really struggling. And so when you can't really run through something, then it like messes up your whole like the flow of the race, because you can't get that like nice run. You're like start stop start stop start stop start stop, and it just really and then you're using all these like stability muscles that you don't normally use because you're slipping and sliding all over the place. So I would say that like that race was not like a good race, but at the same time, it was like super beautiful, like one of the more beautiful races I've ever run in the entire world. So I'm surrounded by all this just gorgeousness, and when I'm at my really low points, like I always sort of remind myself, like, hey, this is what you want. Like I really like the low points more than I like the high points. I mean, it feels good to have a 100-mile race where you feel great the whole race, but I reflect better when I think back at like the really low points, and those are the ones I remember. Like I'll remember Bighorn for the rest of my life, and I'll remember that like crazy suffering and the crazy, pain and all the stuff that I experienced way longer than I'll remember the race where I did it in like 17 hours and like just killed it. Um, because I had to dig a lot deeper to get through that 31 hours. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I got like for me, if I gotta go through a lot of suffering like that, and I heard Bighorn was atrocious, like miles of shin deep mud, just on and on
Yeah,
and
it
on.
was
And but
it
when
was
the
bad.
yeah, I heard, yeah, and not to rub it in, but I got to run Bighorn in 2021, and there was no mud. It was a
Right.
hot year. I got really lucky, and I don't have a lot of experience running in mud, so I probably would have gotten really beat up too, and probably fallen more than a dozen times. But anyways, going back to the point, during when you do make it to the end of all those challenges, I gotta feel like the self pride is that much more heightened because survived and got through it.
Oh yeah. I mean, because I think when I first started doing ultras and I hadn't really understood the dynamic of like mental and physical strength. And so like I think when I first started doing them, it was just all physical strength. And I had like a string of DNFs, which stands for do not finish. And I think a lot of them probably had to do with like mental strength, like me kind of just like giving up because I didn't feel good. Um, and now I reflect back and I'm like, if I was Andy now and went back in time and raced those races, like I totally would have finished them. I would have had a slower time, whatever, but I would have felt better at the end knowing that I had finished. I still like I think back at this race and I was like I had some pretty severe medical things going on, but like I gave up at mile 85. And I still think back like God, I only had 15 miles to go. Like that is like nothing. Like and at the time 15 miles felt like a lot, but you know, I had plenty of time. Like, I was way ahead of cutoffs or anything like that. And it's like, it kills me that like, I gave up. Um, I don't know. Yeah, I think, yeah, you're right. It's like when you finish, it just feels so good. It's just such an accomplishment, regardless of your time, regardless of the journey through the race, the highs and the lows and all that stuff. At the end, you finish, and man, it's just like, you're just feeling so good.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So for someone that's looking to get into running or they're new to running, it sounded like you kind of just gave some nice advice about the mental component. I don't know if there's anything else that you'd want to give advice to someone that's new to running about the mental component, but also the physical component too.
I mean, for mentally, I mean, that's it's like kind of like my preachy stuff of like do hard things. I try to remind everyone every day, like, hey, try to do something hard that you don't want to do. I think when you put yourself into uncomfortable situations and like we talked about the ice plunge or the cold plunge, like it never gets easier. Every day I don't want to do it. And I force myself to do it because like I know I'll feel good afterwards, but like it's a terrible scenario when you're in there and you're shivering and whatnot. Um, but like it's that doing things that like you don't want to do that are hard. Um, that's how you, for me, that's how I work on my mental toughness. Um, and that might be for you running 1 mile. It might be, like not watching TV and going on a walk. Like you're doing things you don't really want to know, you don't really want to do, but like you know that there's a benefit to doing it. And so you do it anyways. And you force yourself to be uncomfortable. You force yourself to do things. It's pouring rain outside. I don't want to go run in this pouring rain, but I need to go for a run. So you got to force yourself to go out there and just get wet. And you know you're going to get wet and you just have to like say, well, it's 110 degrees outside. I don't want to go run in the heat. That sounds awful. I'm going to bring a water bottle and go run in the heat. It's just that always working on doing things that you don't want to do, but there's benefit to it. And like anything in life, it's that consistency and doing it over and over again that like really builds the mental toughness. It's not something you do once and then you're like, oh, I'm mentally tough now. Like I still work on it every day. And occasionally I slip up. Occasionally I am not mentally tough, and occasionally, I'm like, I just can't do it today. It happens. You got to give yourself some grace and realize that you're human and that you're gonna, not always be on your A game. But try to just stay as consistent as possible with that sort of stuff. And over time, months, years, you'll blink and a year will go by and you'll be like, oh my God, I can't believe it's been a year of me doing this. But it will. So, I mean, I can't believe I've been running for 21 years. I mean, that's insane to me. So,
Yeah.
um, I can remember that first run, that mile and a half around the track. I mean, I literally can still remember it like no problem. And here I am 21 years later, still running. It's crazy to
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think, we're talking about, getting to the finish line after a hard race and really feeling a lot of self-pride. But my gosh, like when we stick with something consistently for the long term, whether we meant to or not, it feels good. And there's some self-pride with that. And like, man, having some self-pride, like that feels great to me. And then, going back to doing these things, doing hard things, I was thinking about the difference between, and I kind of mentioned it earlier with quick pleasures, but now I was thinking in terms of immediate gratification or delayed gratification. And I think there's just something about delayed gratification where you kind of got to work for it. It has a bigger effect. It feels better than getting, hey, you know what? Like I'm going to stay inside and stay warm because it's a January day in Kansas. I'm not going to go running today. No, I'm going to go out. I'm going to
Right.
wear two pairs of tights. I'm going to wear two jackets. I'm going to get this done. I'm going to come back and like, oh my gosh, I had a great time.
Yeah, and I mean, and sometimes like not so much as anymore because of like social media, but sometimes there's like a lot of like internal motivation. Although, I've read a lot of studies lately about people becoming more successful if, they post all their runs and they post all their workouts and they post it on social media because it's more motivating for them internally. And, certain people need that, and I think that that's great. I mean, I post all my runs on Strava. I occasionally post, I post all my weekly. I've run 100 miles on, my social media, and I enjoy it. But I've also done races where I finished and nobody was there. I just finished the race and I was done, and then that was like it, and I just went home. So nobody's cheering for you or anything like that. So it's it's kind of an interesting, like you have to have a little self motivation, but I think if you put yourself out there online, and yeah, you might open yourself up to some criticism, but if you put yourself out there online, a lot of times there's a lot of like positivity, um, which I think can be good. Like there's a lot of like exercise communities online now. Obviously Strava being one. I think Nike has one too. Um, I don't know the other ones, but there's a lot of these like running like apps and things like that, and you get on there and like you have a couple friends and you follow a couple people and like you can get motivated, they can motivate you. Everyone's giving each other like high fives and kudos and all that sort of stuff, and that can feel good too, especially if you maybe have a friend group that doesn't run or a friend group that you don't know anybody that exercises and you're out there by yourself. Like you know, the power of social media is mind blowing. I mean, there's a lot of like communities out there, and there's a lot of running influencers, and like you can see their community, and like um, it's a lot of positivity going on, which I love.
Yeah. Well, I think like, you know what, like I think you made a good point there. Not everything has to be and it probably never is. Now, everything doesn't have to be 100% purely intrinsic motivation. It's kind of nice to sprinkle a little bit of extrinsic motivation on there because we kind of all need it. Like we are human beings, we're imperfect human beings, and getting some cheers from some friends or whatnot, or some some followers, or them saying get after it, like that's helpful for sticking with that consistency and continuing to get out there.
Well, and I don't know how much you've studied like the different generations, but um, the younger generations, like they kind of need that, and they appreciate it. Like, so I'm a fire captain, so I have to train a lot of firefighters, and the newer generation firefighter is very different from my generation of firefighter, where, you know, nobody ever said anything positive to us. You just do the job and like, shut up. And that's not how this new generation, is. Like, you need to like give them positive feedback and like, tell them they're doing a good job and give them attaboys and all that stuff. And I have no issue with it. I think it's great, but like some of the old school mentality is like they don't want to do that, because they can't understand that there's generational differences in humans. Um, but yeah, I mean the new generation, like they've been raised on social media, they've been raised on all this stuff. They need that like high fiving and like, hey, you're doing a great job, and keep working out and all that stuff. And I have no problem giving it to them. I think that however you spread the positivity, whatever works for them is what you should give them. So and at the end,
Right.
we're just trying to make everybody successful. Everybody, high tide raises all boats or whatever the saying is. We're all just trying to make the world a better place.
Yeah, absolutely. And helping people be happy. And I think that there is generational differences because there's different technology that was going on with different generations at the time being. And, there's just different factors that play into these generational differences. And I really think, like you said, it doesn't mean that one generation is better than the other. It's just like, hey, let's all, be able to recognize those differences and help each other out to live the best life we can.
It's hard for some people to understand that philosophy, though. It's people struggle with that. That people are different, based on their age or what year they were born. So
Right.
just something to
Right.
think about.
Yeah. Well, Andy, as we come to the conclusion of our episode here, what races do you have? And there's probably quite a few. What races are you looking forward to for 2023 here?
I got two big ones that I'm looking forward to. I have what's called UTMB, which is Ultra Trail Mont Blanc, which will
Second time
be, I
for
think,
you, right?
September fourth time.
Love it. Well, it's your favorite
Yeah,
race, right?
yeah, it is my favorite race. Yeah, so
I've not
I
done
got
it. That's awesome.
yeah, so I ran canyons. I didn't get in this year, and then I ran canyons, which was in Auburn earlier this year, and then they gave me a free entry into UTMB. Um, so I'm going back to Chamonix in France and doing that. And then I'm also doing Moab 240. I'm starting to dip my toe in the like 200-mile distance, and yeah, I'm gonna see how this all goes. Um, so yeah, those are probably my two big ones that I'm looking forward to. Um, UTMB is more of just a fun race. I don't like try to get like crazy, but I want to see if I can do all right at Moab, because I have not been super successful in the 200-mile distance, and so I'm gonna change some strategy things and see if I can do better at Moab.
Yeah. Well, it seems like that 200 distance. So I need to maybe try 200 distance because I'm scared of the 200-mile distance. And I gotta imagine like maybe
Yeah.
the first time you towed the start line, you're scared. But it seems like with a 200-mile races, there's still a lot of exploration to be had of what's the best way for managing throughout that long, long distance.
I just can't figure out the sleep. I mean, I mean, I remember when I was 18, I didn't need sleep and blah blah blah, but as like as the race progresses, like I just fall apart. Like my body just like all these people do it and they do it on such little amounts of sleep, and I like kind of try to do that and like I just can't. Like my body
Yeah.
will like not let me, and so yeah, I haven't been able to figure that aspect of it out. And I've done three of them and really messed around, and yeah, I don't know. Um, I'm just like anything in life. I'm one of those people who will just keep trying it until I figure it out. I'll just like it's just harder to figure it out because there's so much planning and time considerations and like a 100-mile race, like literally you could call me and say, "Hey, I'm running 100 miles tomorrow. Will you jump in and run it with me?" And I could run 100 miles tomorrow. But a 200-mile race, like that's a whole, I'm going to have to plan for, quite a while to get it all mentally in my head how I'm going to handle it. So,
Yeah. Gosh, I think I would really struggle with the sleep as well. And what's going to be what's your loose game plan here on June 29th? Would it be like, taking a nap every 10 hours for 30 minutes or something?
well, I mean, the big difference is like I normally run all my races solo and uncrewed. And
Yeah.
at Moab this year, I'm going to have a buddy crew and pace me.
Okay.
So that will be way different because I'll have somebody to be able to like, crack the whip behind me to keep me motivated. And then I'm going to have an RV that I'm going to be able to sleep in if I need sleep. Whereas, when I've done Cocodona 3 times and that's a 250 miler and I end up just like sleeping a lot of times just on the dirt, which works, but it's going to be a slightly different experience to be able to have a bed and, be warm, not be shivering on the cold dirt, in the middle of the night. Things like that will be a little bit different. So, and I think Moab is slightly more runnable than Cocodona. Cocodona is super technical, like on a level that is hard for me to even really describe unless you've run it.
Wow.
It's like there's large sections of it that are like basically unrunnable just because it's so technical. And so, obviously that plays a huge factor into your race because you have to do a lot of sort of like hike jogging type things because of
Uh-huh.
the trail, which, plays into all different muscle groups and all that sort of stuff.
So the first time that you did a 200 miler, were you at the start line pretty darn scared?
Um, so the first, because so technically I did a 72-hour race and I got 230 miles, but it was just a loop course.
Okay.
And I didn't know how far I was going to go in 72 hours. So that's technically the first time I did a 200 miler, but like the first time I did like a mountain 200 miler was Cocodona. And yeah, I was pretty scared. I mean, it was the inaugural year and nobody really knew what to expect. And I was out there solo by myself, like on the inaugural year. So that was
That's
a little
awesome.
ballsy, I think. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, I mean, I get scared before every race. Like, I don't care if it's like I ran a 50K the other day and it was like, yeah, I get the butterflies and the dry heaves and all that stuff. Like, I know what can go wrong in an ultra. And I know like that it's a long list. And so like I always get scared and nervous before them because because so many things can go wrong and you don't want them to go wrong, but there's some things you can't plan for and other things you can, but like, you could trip and fall and break a rib. You could be trip and fall and break an arm. I mean, that's a pretty simple thing that could happen.
Yeah.
So, it's scary. There's a high threshold to like a failure in those. So,
Yeah, a lot of miles that things can go wrong. Well, Andy,
yeah.
it's been fantastic to have an old bodies outside. This has been a super fun conversation. Like I said at the start, you've been someone that's inspired me. I love following your profile on Instagram and seeing what you're up to. Your posts are very accessible, very fun. They got some humor in them, and it's cool that the stuff that you share too. Like you'll be like, hey, check out my Strava average mile pace: 12 minutes, 13 minutes, 11 minutes, and it's just something that shows like, hey, you can go out and do this, have fun. Like running is just, it's just something that's great and something that everyone can do. And I think like you really show that on your Instagram. And so I think on top of that, with a lot of other things, it's inspiring to see.
Well, thanks for having me. And, like, yeah, I'm just, the thing about my social media, I always like, I'm not sponsored. I don't make any money off of it. And, like, I'm just trying to inspire people. And, um, yeah, I'm just a normal guy and there's no team. It's just me. So, you know, like everything I do is just like, it's just me. there's nothing, no like, nobody behind me like helping me. So um, be patient with me when it comes to the social media because it's just kind of I just do it for fun.
Nice, nice. All right. Well, I'm going to throw on the outro music and we'll call it an episode.
All right.